what is the one thing that you absolutely need to have a strong relationship with another person? You know, it's absolutely necessary. And it's a really easy question if you looked at the title of this section. You know, it's trust, right? You have to have trust if you're really going to build a relationship with another person. But trust is kind of a big word. There's lots of parts to trust. We know what it feels like when you have somebody that you really trust, you can count on. You know, does it feel safe? It feels secure. You know, it just feels good. You feel good being around that person. And I think we've all had people in our lives that we don't trust. You know, and you know when you're around them, it doesn't feel so great. You know, you're kind of on edge a little bit. You're suspicious. You don't quite know what they're going to do. But to describe trust, no, to put it into words, what exactly is trust? Because there's so many parts of that. So today we're going to kind of break it down and take a look at it. Charles Feltman, an author, he has a pretty good definition of trust. He says, trust is choosing to risk making something you value to another person, vulnerable to another person's actions. So you're really handing over something that's really important to you into somebody else's hand and their control, and you have no control of what they're going to do. So that's really what trust is. And mistrust or distrust is what is important to me is not safe with this person in the situation, or maybe even any situation. And trust is something that we need to have to develop a relationship, and I think a lot of people, when they get burned a lot, they start not trusting anybody. And that really isolates you. So to really have good relationships and to be connected with other people, building trust is really important. A researcher, an author, you may have heard of her name is Brene Brown. She's put together all the research that she's found, and she's kind of put it into a little package of how she could describe trust. And I like the way she does it. She turns it into an acronym called BRAVING, where each letter stands for something really important. And when I think of braving, the image that comes to my mind is, you know, sailors out on the ship and there's a storm and they're braving the storm. You know, they're going through it. They're not turning around. They're not going back. To get to their goal, they have to keep going. And I think that when we build trust with other people, you have to be brave. You have to kind of brave through it and have courage because you are vulnerable. You are taking a risk with them. So let's take a look at Brene Brown's braving acronym and see where, you know, where we can trust others and maybe in areas that we find that ourselves aren't trustworthy. So let's break it down. So the very first letter in braving is the letter B. B stands for boundaries. You can't have a trusting relationship with another person if you don't have good, clear boundaries. You know, a boundary is a dividing line. You know, everything on this side, I'm okay with this. I'm not okay with this. And you have to make those boundaries that you have clear to other people, or they're not going to know, you know where those lines are. You know, and if they don't have a good relationship with you, they're not going to want to cross those lines. So you need to communicate those lines and make it really clear. I think we've had people in our lives too that maybe push our boundaries. You know, you let them know maybe you need a really good sleep to you know, good night's sleep to be able to be productive at work the next day. And so you set a boundary and say, you know, I'm going to be in bed by 10 o'clock every night, and that's it. And you've got friends that maybe are pushing you. Like, let's go out, you know, come on, you can stay out. And they're not really respecting your boundaries. You feel like you can't really trust them in that area when you make it really clear. So that's an example of holding a good boundary. You have to let that be known to other people. The next letter in braving is the letter R. R stands for reliability. Are you going to do what you say you're going to do consistently, not just once, but over and over again? Can you be counted on? Can somebody rely on you? You say you're going to, you know, help them move on Saturday. Do you show up and actually do it? And do you are a person of your word, you know, over and over and over? Can people really count on you? That's being reliable, and you need to have reliability to build a trusting relationship. Sometimes the problem with reliability, especially if you're a person that likes to help others and you want to, you know, contribute, that you maybe overcommit. Some people will say, yeah, I can help, yeah, because they really want to, and they want to be there, and they want to pitch in, but then they end up, you know, don't have the time or don't have the energy, and then they don't follow through, and that makes them unreliable. So with reliability and building trust, just commit to what you know that you are willing to do, and then make sure that you follow through on that. The next letter is A. A stands for accountability. Accountability is really about when you make a mistake, and you screw up, that you own it, you admit it, you go to the person, you apologize, and you try to make it right. And not just being accountable yourself in going to the other person, but letting other people come to you. When they make a mistake, that you allow them to come to you also. And some people want to hold grudges and they want to stay mad, but to really build trust in that accountability area is being willing to let people come to you too. Own their, they'll tell you what they did wrong, they'll apologize, and to be able to accept that. No, it doesn't mean that you have to, we can forgive, but it doesn't mean that you then just have to dismiss it and think it didn't happen. Especially, if they messed up in an area that really ruined your trust. It doesn't mean you have to trust them again. That can take time to build. But giving a person an opportunity to be accountable and to be able to come to you and ask for that forgiveness is really important. The next letter, we're halfway there, is the letter V. The V stands for vault. What do you think of when you think of a vault? Like a big safe, strong safe that's locked, that other people can't get in unless they have a key, right? A vault is where we keep things that are really precious or important to us. We keep them safe. So what the vault means in relationships and building trust is that I keep your secret safe and you can keep my secret safe. So if you come to me and you tell me something really important to you, something that you don't really want other people to know about, that I keep that confidence. I keep that in my vault. I'm not going to go tell somebody else and say, hey, did you hear? This is what I just heard. We don't gossip about other people's business. So having that, being a vault for another person, and having a person in your life that you can go to, talk to about anything, and they're going to keep that private. It's kind of tricky because, we're human, and sometimes we love to hear those juicy little stories about other people and other people's business, right? So it's really tempting to want to hear that. But, have you noticed, though, people that do come to you and tell you, everybody else's business, that you really don't trust them? Because if they're not just, would you really tell a person like that something private that you have? Of course not. Because they're not trustworthy, because they're probably going to be sharing your news too. So make sure that you're a trustworthy person and you keep things private and you keep things safe. It can be a little tricky. Some people bond, form connections with other people based on telling other people's stories. Maybe it's kind of a mutual dislike of another person. And they feel like they're making friends with that person. They feel like they're building friends because they're both kind of talking bad about another person. That's not real friendship. That's a fake friendship. It's not really a friendship built on trust, is it? It's just a friendship built on mutual hatred. It's common enemy friendship. So be really careful with that when you hear stories or when people come in and trust you with something. Be a person that has a very strong, secure vault. The next letter is a really big one. That is the letter I. I stands for integrity. Integrity is very huge when it comes to building trust with another person. What is it? What is integrity? You may have heard some people describe it as, being real and authentic. So how you are at home or in private when nobody's watching is how you are in public. That you're real. You're not a phony, fake person. That's one way people describe it, but it's not really complete. And again, I prefer Brene Brown's explanation. She breaks integrity down into 3 parts. She says it's choosing courage over comfort. So in other words, it's doing what's right, not what's just fast or easy, taking a lazy way out of it. It's doing what you believe is right. And it's following your values, actually practicing your values instead of just talking about them. So that's what integrity, and that's a huge part. You can't really have trust with another person if you don't have integrity. The next letter is the letter N. N stands for non-judgment. It means no judging. Of course, we judge all day. We have to judge. You can't go through a day without judging. You judge the weather. Is it cold out? Do I need a jacket? We judge people. We can't even know if somebody's trustworthy if we're not making judgments, right? We're watching them, we're observing their behavior. So we are judging all the time. That's not what this means. What this means is when somebody messes up, makes, or just has some struggles. Maybe they're going through something, and they come to you and they share that struggle with you. They want confide in you about what's happening. You don't judge them for that if you want to build trust. That's not the time to say, oh, you stupid idiot, why would you do something like that? Or why would you say that? That's not the time to do it. When somebody comes to you for help, maybe it's for counsel or advice or they just need to be heard. Non-judgment means don't go to the place of criticizing them or shaming them or blaming them. At that time, it's more important to try to understand and listen and let them approach you without casting judgment on them. We all need people in our lives like that, right? There's going to be times where you need to go to somebody. You want to share something. And to know that person's not going to judge you, they're not going to shame you for doing something stupid, but they're going to really listen and offer your help. That's really important. But also remember, this goes both ways. It's nice to be the person that people come to, to offer help and to be there and be a supportive friend. It's not always easy to go to another person and share your own struggles, is it? To be vulnerable. But to build a trusting relationship, it's a two-way street. You have to also be willing to be the person, to share your need and to ask for help. The very last letter, we're at the end of braving, is G for generosity. What generosity means is really giving somebody the benefit of the doubt. So instead of jumping to conclusions, assuming the worst, it's assuming maybe the best about them. So maybe you're with a friend and they say something that maybe might seem insensitive, rude. Instead of jumping to that conclusion that they are just being mean or being hurtful to you, instead you be generous. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You might think to yourself like, well, they're having a bad day. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe something's going on in their life that I don't know about, And so when you do go and talk to them, then you can ask about that. Say, hey, what you said the other day, you mentioned you said this and it seemed hurtful, but I didn't believe that that's what you meant. Can we talk about that? And then you give them a chance to be accountable and get that restored. So to be generous and not jump to conclusions. Do you know of anybody in your life that seems to just go to the negative? No matter what happens, somebody doesn't answer the phone. Oh, they're avoiding me, or they're being rude, or it doesn't really matter what happens, but they automatically assume the worst about the other person on the other end. If you know of somebody like that, you probably know that you don't feel very trusting of them, right? Because you have to be perfect around that person. That the slightest infraction and they're thinking bad about you. You can't really build trust with somebody like that. You want people to believe the best about you. And so that's it. Those are the important qualities of trust. Why does it matter? Why are we breaking it down like this? What's the point of it all? Have you ever said to somebody, I just don't feel like I can trust you? And they respond, why can't you trust me? I love you. I care about you. What's wrong? Why don't you trust me? When you break it down like this, you can take a look at where's the area, like what fell apart. Maybe it was boundaries. Maybe you could answer that and say, well, I shared something really important in private and you went and told your friends. So, or maybe it's reliability. Maybe the person you're saying that I don't trust is, they don't follow through with what they're going to say. They make a commitment to you, they don't keep their promises. So when you feel mistrust towards another person, you can take a look at it. You can break it down and say, which one of these areas in braving needs work? And likewise, if somebody's not feeling trusting towards you, if they can identify that, you can look at that and think, oh, is there something in me that's not trustworthy that I can work on too? So that's why we look at it that's why we kind of tear it apart. Because it is a really big word. There's so much to trust, and it's so important in our relationships. So kind of taking it apart, taking some time to look at it. especially if we've been hurt, like I talked earlier. If you've been burned a lot by people, it's kind of hard to trust. It's kind of hard to put yourself at risk. Or if you've experienced heartbreak, sometimes then it's really hard to trust again, isn't it? And even sometimes we kind of turn it back on ourselves and we feel like we just don't trust ourselves. You can get to the point when you've experienced a lot of failure in your own life that you start to feel like, how could I be so naive? How could I be so stupid? How could I miss that? And then we start to not trust ourselves. If that happens to you and you've experienced some failure, this braving works for that too. Take it apart and ask yourself, did I cross my own boundaries? Or did I let somebody push me so I kind of violated my own boundaries? Was I reliable? Did I do the things that I said I was going to do? Was I accountable? If I made a mistake, did I go to the other person? Did I keep my stories safe? Or did I share them maybe to people that I shouldn't have trusted? Did I have integrity? Did I really follow my values? Did I respect my own values? Am I harsh with myself? Am I critical? Am I shaming myself? Or am I kind to myself? Am I assuming the best about myself? You see, if you don't develop trust with yourself and be kind to yourself and work on those areas, you might feel like you don't deserve for somebody else to trust you. The one person in your whole life that you should be most able to trust is really yourself. And so developing that trust with yourself, holding those good boundaries, being the person that you want to be, that has integrity, and going through that list is really where it starts. Kind of has to start with you. If you can trust yourself and you know that you're going to follow what's important to you, then other people will learn to trust you too. They'll start seeing that you are a solid person and that they might want to have a really strong relationship with you because it is safe and it's secure. So as you develop relationships and as you grow with other people, think about trust. Think about, how can I build trust? How can I be a trustworthy person? We don't want to isolate. We don't want to be alone. I know it's scary. It takes risks. It takes courage to take a risk on trusting somebody. So, but it makes life good, right? When you feel really secure and safe with another person, it's pretty great. So again, move forward, keep trusting, build those relationships. And thank you for taking the time to listen.